Thanks, Mayor. I think you did a pretty good job kind of depicting kind of the background. To the mayor's point, we started meeting kind of in the fall last year, monthly, with all the projects that you guys have going on. Of course, you've been very successful with community crossings, successful again here with this last call. So it kind of spurred from coordinating those projects a little bit better, coordinating the water projects that we currently have under construction, which is your booster stations and your elevated water storage tanks, and then coordinating your wastewater projects, which is forthcoming. And then all of a sudden now potentially more water projects. So I know some new faces on the council and board. Going back 2022, 2023 timeframe, we did an overall PER of the system at that time. With the SRF project last year, we only did the booster stations and the tanks. But with that initial PER, we had looked at improvements to your distribution system, replacing old cast iron mains in the system, with PVC. Of course, took a little bit to get easements on that project. We got, I think easements were required like 2024. So long story short, there were projects in that 2023 PER that weren't constructed. So what kind of came out of this, what started this new PER that you have before you, kind of came from those projects left over in 2023 that we didn't get done. And those would be those distribution mains. The other thing that spurred why I'm here tonight talking about these projects is SRF was given a significant amount of money earlier in the year for lead service line. So Loogootee has approximately 1,271 unknown service lines. So with current lead service line inventory requirements, if it's an unknown, you have to have a replacement program for it. So you can probably do the math, 1,271 unknowns. If we had to replace those, that would be a very expensive project. So that is grant money. SRF has over $100 million in grant money that they are prioritizing with this application period that's going in right now. So that kind of spurred this as well. What you have in front of you is trying to take advantage of some of that lead service line money that's available.
Is that 100% or 80-20 or?
It would all be potentially grant, So that's kind of what spurred it. So as the mayor said, once we start talking about lead service line inventory, where you're currently at with that, talking about the distribution improvements from 23 that we didn't get done, we decided we're going to look at the whole system again. So I'll go through quickly the existing system. You guys probably know your existing water system. Of course, I think Bo and Daniel and the group have done a really pretty good job with it. You've got 6 wells in your current well field, which is about a mile and a half away here from the water treatment plant. Those wells, 4 of them operate at 500 gallon per minute. 2 of those wells operate at 1,000 gallon per minute. So to put it in perspective, when I say 1,000 gallon per minute, that roughly equates to 1.44 million gallon a day. So quick reference when I say 1,000 gallon per minute. So from the well field to your plant, there's an existing 14-inch cast iron main, or sorry, ductile iron main that was constructed around 82, 83, I think, though, right? Somewhere in that period. So 40 years ago. That main was not wrapped. So nowadays what we do is we'll wrap ductile iron with a poly wrap. That prevents hydric soils from causing that ductile iron to corrode. It was not wrapped in 1982 and 1983. So working with Bo and Daniel, there are a lot of points in that 14-inch transmission main from the well field to the plant that they've had failures on. So it's really in pretty poor shape. But that 14-inch main goes from the well field to your plant, and then from the plant all the way into the city, where it then disperses into a variety of 12-inch all the way down to 3-inch, 2-inch, 1-inch service lines. So that's your distribution system. Your water treatment plant was last improved, I think, 02-03 time period, with some work done to it, but it was built, I think, earlier in the 1980s as well, in that same period, right, Bo? Your water plant?
Primary structure, yes.
Yeah. So your existing water treatment plant basically is 1,000 gallons per minute, so 1.44 MDD is your capacity of finished water. Plant has an aerolator, filter media. You feed potassium permanganate, sodium hypochlorite. You don't feed fluoride anymore, correct?
Correct.
So, but that's what you feed into the plant, and then of course that goes out into the distribution system. I think, if I remember correctly, you've got about 30 to 35 miles of distribution mains in the system.
That's correct.
Of various ages. So we still have a good portion of those that are cast iron. So I'll talk about that shortly as well. Of course, you got the 2 elevated water storage tanks, which total capacity of those is about a million gallons of storage. Your average day production at the plant, I think, is roughly about 400 to 450,000 gallon. It's in my reports. Let me verify that. Yeah, as of 2025, 24 to 25, we averaged about 482,000 gallon a day production. Our peak day was 1,122,800 gallons. So percentage-wise, you're only at about 34% capacity at your plant on an average day. And then peak day, that peak day, which I talked to Bo and Daniel a little bit before the meeting, was about 78% of your capacity. But that peak day, I think, had a leak potentially. So only other thing I would add to your existing system, of course, your 2 tanks. The one got repainted last year in the fall. We've got some work to do to it here this spring with the contractor coming back. And then your other tank will get repainted here hopefully soon, hopefully in the next month or two. So, and then you have 2 new booster stations, which are part of that project last year. That should be starting soon as well. You've got your State Road 550 booster station and the Scenic Hills booster station. So that's your existing system. I think overall, to the point is, I feel like it's been pretty adequately maintained from everything that we saw. Any questions on existing conditions before I get into what is proposed?
I'd just like to add that you touched upon about the ductile iron and stuff not being wrapped, and that was one, last year or the year before.
Last year.
They had 19 feet of a 14-inch line that had to be replaced, and that's not an easy task for these guys to do, and also with our distribution of system. So we're starting to see where it's affecting us. So it's not going to get any better. So that's why we're going down this route, trying to figure out what we can do, because to get it from the well field to the plant and then in town, it's going to take a lot of work. That's a lot of 14-inch line. You're talking, a few miles of line there.
I was going to talk about it a little later, but to the mayor's point, 14 inch is a very uncommon pipe size. So one of our proposed improvements is replacing that 14-inch line with a 16-inch line. 16-inch is just more readily available, and it's actually cheaper to do 16-inch than it is 14-inch. And to the point that the mayor made, I think I was talking to Daniel and Bo a little bit before the meeting, they had to get that 14-inch pipe from Indy. It took, I think you said, 3 hours just to get the pipe here. So, I mean, with such a critical element to your system, I could even see down the future, we probably got lucky we had 14-inch available just down the road in Indy. If we don't, that could be a real big problem.
Yeah, we had a stick of it, but it ended up being worse the farther we looked. So
yeah.
We had to get another stick and combine the two.
So one thing, the reason I threw out some of those numbers that I did, so you've got 1 million gallons of storage capacity in your elevated tanks. You heard me say your plant's roughly 480,000 gallon per day average demand. So really you have 2 days of storage in your tanks. And that's not assuming it happens in a worst case scenario. Let's say it's a hot, dry day. That would be a worst case kind of scenario. But look at it like you've got 2 days of storage in your tanks. So if something happens at your plant, you can see where the issues could be down the road from that. If we don't address that raw water transmission main. So let's talk about proposed projects a little bit. So Wellfield, I think, is in pretty good shape. Those 6 wells, Bill and I were having a conversation before the meeting. Those original 4 wells were built in the 1980s. Still getting decent capacity out of them. I mean, you have those clean tested every year by Lane. The 2 additional 1,000 gallon per minute wells that were constructed 0203, they seem like they're producing pretty well also. So, I mean, you have, in my opinion, you have adequate capacity in your well field. I don't think there's anything that needs to be done there other than what you're doing, which is annual cleaning and testing of those wells. The raw water transmission main, of course, that is a big need. So that project, we're proposing replacing your existing 14-inch with a new 16-inch line all the way from the well field to the water treatment plant. And then also from the water treatment plant into the distribution system into what I call city limits here. So overall, it's about 3 miles of replacement. So that's a pretty big project in and of itself. At the water treatment plant, I'm just going to go from the wells to the water treatment plant to your distribution system. So we've already talked about the supply from the well field to the plant. The plant itself, I think, is in pretty good shape. Again, your last improvement project out there was 0203 time period. The issue that we see out there in talking with Bo and Daniel is the aerolator unit, so the big, tall, vertical element out there, that is in need of repainting and some rehab work. The problem is that if we take that down, we have an issue. So there is an existing concrete pad adjacent to that existing aerolator, which we're proposing to put a new 1,000 gallon per minute aerolator on. And then once that new aerolator would be up and running, we would take the old one down. We would remove the filter media. We would go ahead and replace the valves, the actuators, the switches, hatches, and then sandblast and repaint both the interior and the exterior of that aerator unit. And then down the road, having 2 aerator units would give you flexibility. So any issue should come up, you should be able to take care of them. You would have 2 units. That would also give you additional capacity down the road should you need it. So that's the biggest project that we see at the water treatment plant. We also are proposing to replace your raw and finished water meters. And then also Bo and Daniel, I think, had a really, really good idea when we were talking about this. It's piped out for an additional high service pump in the future. So we are proposing adding another 1,000 gallon per minute high service pump with a VFD. So those are the projects that we're including at the water treatment plant. And then going out into the distribution system, we've got about 2.5 miles of 3-inch, 4-inch, 6-inch, and 8-inch replacement. And those are the projects that we actually put plans together for you back in 23. We worked with you in getting easements for those projects in 24. So one big element of SRF is, do you have the easements already? So we were able to check that box that you've already got your easements for those replacement projects. The other thing in the distribution system that I wanted to highlight, kind of what spurred all this, is your lead service line inventory. So you've got 1,271 unknowns. So what does that mean? So with, I call it LCRI, so lead and copper rule inspection program. That program has a deadline of November of 27. Any unknowns or known lead lines have to have a replacement program as of November 27. You have a 10-year period to replace either those unknowns or those lines that have been identified as lead. So it's really critical of us to determine those unknowns. We need to know how many of those are lead or not. Because if they're an unknown, you have to have a plan in place to replace them. So we included hydro excavating. So part of, if you move forward with this project, we would, as part of the distribution projects, have a contractor hydro excavate each service line that's an unknown, both on the customer side of the meter and the utility side of the meter, to determine if it's lead or not. So that's also factored into the distribution system project. And then really finally, the last thing that I think we identified as a need, working with the mayor and Bo and Daniel, is a new utility building. So utility office and a storage building. And Trey, why don't you talk a little bit about that project and the needs of it, if you will.
Excuse me, but does everybody know what the hydro excavating is? I understand what that is.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, it's basically a piece of equipment that comes out, it sucks out the soil, exposes the pipe, and then we would have to restore it after it. And what we have planned for you is once that gets exposed, a picture would get taken of it for verification purposes, and then we'd also get a shot on it, so we've got to document it. Trey, go ahead. Why don't you talk a little bit about the utility building?
Yeah. So the proposed utility building is roughly 13,000 square feet. It's 125 by 103. It'll have 4 bays, just for utility vehicles and whatnot. There will be some.
Sorry, guys. Here we go. My babysitter had a meeting.
There's our quorum.
There you go, Grandpa.
It's awful.
I believe we'll have 1 office in the interior, a conference room, break room, utility office, and 3 or 4 restrooms, and then a general parts storage. Miscellaneous items. And then just minimal heat, right? I mean, minimal plumbing, electric.
Where would this building be put up at?
On North Street.
On North Street?
Before the house down.
Yeah, so
Down
you'll
from
see on
Red
the,
Okay, yeah, now I see
the
where we're at.
floor plan there, the overhead doors, they'll be facing North Street.
And this can be tweaked a little bit, but this is what we sat down and kind of figured out. Like, there's an area in there we can actually store our pipes and stuff like that. If we do people not out in the weather, different things like that. So, I think right now,
What
out
is it?
back, everything sits outside basically, but
Yeah.
we're back right where we got about 1,500, 2,000 square feet in what we have now, so it's also designed to keep all our equipment out of the weather. You know, I'm not gonna say 100%, but, you know, it's gonna be designed that hopefully we can keep 100% of it out of it. It's gonna be very, very close, but it's all a matter of how we put stuff in there and how we organize and stuff, but it's something that, we desperately need to take a look at for the city. And just to jump back in the 2000 area, there was actually money figured in back then to do a building at that point. I think $350,000 was at the time back then. Though you may have a better memory of me since you've been.
Not right.
Yeah, but it was,
About half the size down on North Oak Street.
yeah. So, you know, we're just trying to get the city moving forward and doing what needs to be done so we can operate efficiently and we don't have stuff getting tore up or rusting out and stuff like that, so. That was one of the purpose of buying that lot and trying to expand some things to take care of what we have.
Do you have an estimate, rough estimate of the cost of the project that you were talking about?
I'm gonna get there after Trey's done, so you're jumping ahead of me, but I can either answer that question or,
That's all Coach
I can
looks
do
at,
that.
it's called.
That's all good. So before I answer your question, I should have pointed this out on page 2 of the handout you have in front of you. That's the location of all the projects that I talked about. So I just wanted to make sure you guys saw that. Page 2 has all of those project locations. To answer your question, on the handout that I gave you, close to the back of the packet is the opinion of probable project cost. I can go through that really quickly. So I broke it down basically into 4 different divisions. And even though this is a PER, I always think about how we would bid this project out. So I always look at opinion of probable cost as a division. So the first division would be that raw and finished water main. So with that division, my probable project cost for it was $4.4 million. That was with a 10% contingency. So that would be the 14-inch raw water main to the plant, and then from the finished main from the plant into your system.
What page you on? It's in the back there.
It's close to the back, so I didn't have it numbered.
It's the third page, and it'd be like 20.
Yeah. It would be, yeah, you're on it. So, yeah, so this first division, that number I read would be on the next page. But yeah, I'm just gonna go through that in order. So the Division 1, as I said, would be roughly $4.4 million. That's with a 10% construction contingency. And that would be replacing that 14-inch line with a 16-inch line. One discussion element that Mr. Wilson and I had before the meeting, I did propose going back with the ductile iron. I think we can consider potentially looking at like PVC if you would be awarded and go in it to design. But currently I have it shown as a 16-inch ductile iron. We would poly wrap that so it doesn't run into the same issues of corrosion that we had with your line from the 1980s. Any questions on that? The second division that we had was the water treatment plant improvements. So again, installing a new 1,000-gallon per minute aerator unit, getting that new unit in service. We would then take down your existing aerator unit and do all the rehab and the repainting of that. And then also we would add a raw water meter and then a finished water meter. And then we would also install a new high service pump, 1,000-gallon per minute with a VFD. Those improvements we estimated at $2.09 million. That's also with a 10% construction contingency. Division 3, which of course is the 2.5 miles of 3-inch, 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch main replacements that I talked about. A lot of those areas are your cast iron areas that we're trying to eliminate. In addition to that is also the hydro excavation that I talked about. That's a pretty big chunk of everything as well. Total for Division 3, I've got estimated at just under $7 million, $6.9 million. You might ask the question, well, like 2.5 miles for distribution versus 3 miles. The problem is in an urban area, you're going to have a much higher cost per foot for those replacements, even though it's smaller pipe. Again, that's with a 10% contingency on that as well. And then finally, the new building that Trey talked about, the storage building, utility office, we've got that estimated at $2.2 million, again, with a 10% contingency. Overall, we've got estimated $15.7 million on the construction cost. And then non-construction cost, which would be, of course, the engineering, that would be bond counsel, that would be labor standards, that would be a financial advisor, about another 2.6 million. That also includes lead service line inventory work. So all that documentation I talked about earlier, taking photos, documenting it, because we have to prove. That's one thing I hear in a lot of the communities that I represent. Well, we don't have any lead. We know that, right? We still have to prove it. So that's the difficult part. So overall project estimate is 18.315 million as of today.
And this is all part of this grant that you're applying for.
Potential grant, right?
Potential
So
grant.
we know that they're,
$100 million is gonna be split how many ways?
it's a little over 100. I think it was like 125. So there's going to be a lot of applicants. So I can't give you an exact number of how many. So to the mayor's point, I think we approached this as this is the basket of needs that we see for the city. I think this is a really good opportunity to get some grant money. I don't think you're going to get all grant money. So to the mayor's point earlier, I think hopefully this summer, June, July time period is when we're going to find out from SRF how you're going to score. So what they do to answer your questions, they're going to compare you to other utilities, other cities, other towns, other utilities that are in the same application process that you are. They'll score you. I think what I've seen in the past, communities that have lead service line needs, have regionalization needs, where you serve other utilities, which you guys do. You guys serve other communities' water as well. I think that will score well. So that's just my experience with these. It's trying to get you an application packet that scores well against your competition.
So you're saying, since we sell water to Davis County, that's gonna help us score better.
Regionalization is a big factor, so I believe it will.
Just competitive nationally or just the state?
Just state. Yeah. State drinking water. Good questions.
Back as far as what we can get, we may get $1 million, we may get $4 or $5 million. We may not get anything, but then that's where we've got to go back and pick and choose what we can realistically do.
Well, we only need 18 million, that's all we need.
That's all we need.
That's not bad.
But we decided to throw everything in one basket just to cover it, because once it's out there, you can't put something in it. You can take away, but you can't put anything back into it. So
yep.
We're just trying to cover all the bases here for the city as far as it's not a want, it's actual needs. You're like Bo mentioned here a couple months back, we're sitting on a $100 million infrastructure, and it takes money to keep it up and going.
Yeah.
Everybody wants water to come in, they want it to go out. So,
yeah, one thing I've always looked at maintenance, this is just me, I always kind of look at the 50-50 rule. So like once you start spending an inordinate amount of time on repairs, and let's talk about the 14-inch main, for example, is there some life left in it? There probably is. But I think hearing what I've heard from these guys, I think it's going to continue to deteriorate pretty rapidly based upon what they've recently seen. So are we at that 50-50 spot yet? Not yet. But with how critical that line is, that's such a critical line.
Well, with the deterioration of that duct line that's in place right now, when you need it most is when something can fail. And I would hate hell to think that we're gonna have another downtown fire, and at the same time that line blow, and you're gonna burn town down.
Yeah.
Well, the day that we had the main leak last year was the day of my house fire. So it was two gut punches at the same time. Bo came out during my fire and said, hey, just, heads up. So as soon as I was done out there, we went straight, worked till midnight. I mean,
And still didn't get fixed.
Yeah,
but
we got it slowed down, but that's when we found that the rest of the pipe that we were going to connect to was in just as bad shape. So we had to wait. It took a couple days to get, everything dug up. And then when it was time to shine, then we had to wait an extra 3 hours for a stick of pipe. So.
With all that being said, if we were successful and
The only one would be a little bit of
We
Church
get-
Street. So
all this project's complete,
very little.
the city of Loogootee will be in good shape. The only thing I anticipate having any kind of issues with would be some of the copper service lines that have already been in the ground for 40+ years. Which were,
Didn't we do a survey on that not too long ago? on our service lines.
That's part of the
On
lead
paper.
and
The
copper
lead.
inventory, that's what,
You did it on paper.
Yeah,
and that's what this.
and we're still,
I
would you say
know.
1,872?
Roughly 1,271.
Okay.
Is the cost for that included in one of these?
It's a non-construction item for the inventory. So it's in two places to answer your question. So the hydro excavator is on the distribution system improvements, which is Division 3. It's line item number 45. Basically, I estimate that what my experience is with a hydro excavator company, they're probably going to run about $2,000 to $2,500 a day to have that equipment on site if you rent it or have someone come in and do it like a Hydromax. And then having a utility staff member present, I estimate about $1,000 a meter for that service. So line item 45 is at just under 1.3 million. That would be the actual field work. And then under non-construction cost would be our staff working, documenting those findings, updating your inventory, all of that. That's a non-construction cost, item number 6. So it's in two places.
1.2, just to verify these lines.
Yep. So there's really, and let me talk about that a little bit. And I'll tell you the logic on why we did what we did. So there are two things you can do to verify service lines in the state of Indiana. One option is to open up your meter pit and look at your setter. I don't like that. I don't feel it's representative. Legally, we can do it per the statute currently, but I think everyone in this room knows that's not, in our opinion, a really accurate depiction of what your service line is. So again, Bo, Daniel, Mayor, and myself in meetings, we decided let's do it right if we're going to do it. We want to know for sure it's lead, right? We don't want to just check a box. So you guys are trying to do the right thing here, in my opinion. It's a heck of a lot more expensive, but it's, in my opinion, the right way to approach it.
And regardless, we don't have a choice. I mean, we have a deadline.
I was gonna say, we had no choice
Yeah,
on
we
that.
don't
That's
have a
what-
choice. We have a deadline that we have to meet.
So that's a
And
priority.
then, yeah, it is probably one of the number one priorities, because that deadline's coming up quick.
Be here before you know it.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and I think that's the scary thing for me and all the communities that I represent is, one, trying to get a solid inventory to know what we're dealing with. So that's hard, just getting to what I would call point A, which is knowing really a great feeling of what is your true inventory. How many lead service lines do you have? And then once we know that, we've got to replace them in a 10-year period too. So you got to keep that in the back of your mind as well. So this is just identifying what
just
they
identify
are.
it's not replacing.
Correct.
There's been mailers put out
Mhm.
asking the homeowners and the property owners to fill out if they know what's on their lines and turn it back into our utility office.
Multiple
But-
times
Yes,
Yes.
but it's hard to get everybody to fill one out and turn it in,
Every year.
Yep.
you know?
So
So,
the
any
the
unknowns?
replacement will be just as much probably or more.
Possibly, depending on how many unknowns we have. There is a thing that's called predictive modeling that we could do as well. So it's a software program that kind of takes, a ton of information, the year the house was built, all of those things. And 120 Water's done a little bit of that for you to date with the inventory that you currently have. But predictive modeling, you still have to do field verification. You got to do 20% field verification. So again, we could get into some of that if, for example, you aren't as successful with the application. There could be some savings there, but again, there's still going to be field verification.
So you and Daniel believe this is the top priority.
It absolutely is. You've got a compliance deadline. So again, by November 27, we need to, whatever our inventory has, we have to have a 10-year replacement program. So I think that's why it's such an important element. And there's pros and cons to everything. We know this way, if you do the hydro excavation, I think we know for sure what service lines we're going to have, and we really know how bad it's going to be. If we don't, let's say we took the route of opening up the meter pit, looking at the setters, there's risk in that for me, right? So in good faith, we got to check a box. Okay, we opened up the meter. Let's say there's no lead service lines, and then people start finding lead, right? We're going to have to replace it down the road that way as well.
Well,
So
not only that, but most of the meter pit openings won't work for us because we use extended leg setters.
Yep.
So all it's gonna verify is what our line is, not the customer's,
So
because our legs extend
so
out
it's not an
past the
accurate
pit.
depiction of what's there.
Correct. It's just gonna show copper.
are these grants something that's available to apply for every year or?
Not every year. So yeah, with the Infrastructure Act, that's where that money is. That's why the state of Indiana got so much of that funding that's going to be doled out this year. There might be some leftover funding from other states that might roll into next year, but this is probably one of our last big grabs of that money from the Infrastructure Act.
as well as that, as he mentions lead, any galvanized lines are considered lead. Lead and galvanized are,
go hand in hand.
they're
Yep.
the same.
So this seems pretty wired-tight. I mean, this is a pretty good package, you think, going forward?
I think so. I think it'll be a competitive application.
Okay.
That pretty well addresses everything that wasn't done in 1982 and the 02, 04 projects.
Okay.
And then to piggyback, Dave, also on here was those existing water mains that were cast iron that
Correct.
could potentially have the our side service lines that will need to be replaced. So it's you're kind of knocking out two birds with one stone there, because the ones that are potential you're updating to begin with, so then it takes those totally out of the picture. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that, yes, the lead and copper is a number one because we have a compliance date, but to piggyback off of it, the mains that we tried to do a few years ago, but we didn't get the easements in time. We had to give the money back to SRF because we didn't get it completed in time. Would also take care of majority of this at the same time on our side. We still have to verify the homeowners, but it would speed it up tremendously at the same time by, they're gonna have to dig it up anyway to put in a new service line, so then it's, you know what I mean? So it's two birds with one stone there at the same time.
So first things apply, see how much we get, and then look this list and start, if we don't get 18 million, chop away.
Yeah, so what we'll do, I reached out today to Baker Tilly. We wanted to have this meeting to get your feedback first, but I did reach out to Baker Tilly today and gave them the cost estimate that I just presented to you tonight. So they're gonna run a quick post-project rate based on this package, assuming you get no grant. It's probably gonna be sticker shock. It's gonna be a ridiculous number. So again, what I've seen in the past, some of those big asks, SRF's goal is really kind of buy that rate down to where it's reasonable, is how I think SRF is gonna look at it. So yeah, I assume the rate though we're gonna get tomorrow, if there's no grant factored in, would be a pretty high rate. So SRF looks at everything for 4,000 gallons. You guys probably know, I think your existing rate's probably about upper 40s, 50 for 4,000 gallons currently.
Oh, yeah.
So my gut feeling would be it's probably gonna, I bet it will more than double with what we have proposed on the table tonight, assuming no grant. So, I can't really tell you what I think grant-wise you're gonna get. So that's the unknown. But yeah, I think
We hope for the best.
hope for the best. I think you've got a competitive package.
Then we just go back, I mean, we gotta look at what's fiscally responsible too, so, that's where we decide what we.
Can
not
do or
the
can't
want,
do.
but what we have to have, what we need versus the want, and go back and, pick out what we need actually and go for it.
Well, 2 weeks ago when we were meeting in French Lake, there was a little bit of conversation in one of the sessions we sat in that discussed rates on an average nationwide. Obviously, San Francisco Bay Area is the highest in our nation. And then it came down to Indiana. It broke it down a little more, but not by system. And believe it or not, we are in the average. We're not on the upper level of higher rates. We are in the average level.
Kinda like
And
keep it
I
there,
know that it's,
Indiana or us?
us.
we'll city together.
Yeah, we're on average.
Within, we
state.
are on average rate within the state of Indiana,
You're talking about water, sewer.
both really,
Yeah.
but it was primarily water,
Who was the highest, Bob?
San Francisco.
No, in Indiana.
They didn't break it down by
Probably
system.
Petersburg.
Yeah, I always, it's funny, Daniel makes that comment. I gave a presentation at the Alliance 2 weeks ago now on Petersburg, and they had a very interesting, I did a case study on it. Very small community, you all know Petersburg, right? Water-wise, they're pretty healthy financially water-wise. They've got a really good aquifer. They wholesale to Pike Gibson. But sewer was a real issue for them. They only have 900 customers. So their sewer plant, existing was 0.6 MGD. We bumped it up to 1.3. Huge I&I issues in their system. So that project was a $22 million project for 900 customers. So we got, at that time, we funded that through rural development. We got the biggest grant in state history at the time for them. They got about $9 million in grant. So that was big for them. But yeah, there's just so many factors that go into it. For example, in my mind, if we don't get what you want to see from SRF, and I haven't even talked about these guys with this, so you'll hear for the first time tonight. EDA has funds again. So EDA was kind of a weird program for a little bit there with the last administration change. but it looks like EDA is getting funded again. We had a dialogue with EDA, and I think that could be an option for us with coal impacted communities. We would have to show that here. So that's one thing I want to look at is EDA potentially for you guys too. So my mind's always thinking about funding sources and opportunities that we have. So definitely we'll continue to fight for you guys and opportunities for the city of Loogootee, whether it's SRF or EDA or RD. RD is not a great one to go at this point in time. They've really slashed the funding for rural development.
Can you apply for them at the same time? I mean, the SRF and the EDA?
Different schedule. So yeah, I think one thing I wanted to do, again, I hadn't even talked to anyone about this yet. I've asked John Craig in our office to start looking at EDA and reaching out to the EDA director to see if there's any opportunities for Loogootee. So I've already kind of got that ball rolling for you guys.
Now, there'll be, with all development up at Crane and around the area like that, I mean, that's all being presented in this too, as to the future. I mean, we got a lot of development going on right now.
Yeah.
And that's gonna get us some high points because of the potential, more development than what we're getting. I mean, you know, we're looking at a couple hundred extra customers coming on here real soon. I shouldn't say extra, but more with all the development we have coming on. So it's a good reason. That's gonna put a lot more stress on our system from a pumping capacity alone.
Mayor, you remind me a couple things I wanted to talk about, so I'm glad you asked that question. So I went back to our PER that we did in 23, and it was interesting. The years 21 through 22 we analyzed when we did the 23 PER. You were at about 26% of the plant capacity at that time. Here we are in 24, 25, you're at about 33, 34%. So you might ask, okay, why are we up? Well, we've had growth, to the mayor's point. You know, we've got country court subdivision. You've got other developments that have happened too. So I think that's a really good sign for the city is you are getting more customers. There are a lot of communities in Southern Indiana that don't have that dynamic. So I think there's some good things you have going for you. That is one of them. From a population growth though, it's not great. So it's one of those weird things. We always, as engineers, we look at census data, and then I always try to look at actual facts, right? Because the census data doesn't necessarily capture what you're accurately seeing here. We're looking at it by the decade with census data. So from 1980 to 2020, Loogootee itself decreased 16% population. The county decreased about 10%. Projecting from 2030 to 2050, census is projecting 13% population decrease in the county. But that's why I brought up comparing from 21, 22 to 24, 25. You guys are seeing population growth. So keep that in mind. Mayor, that's a good point.
Yeah, I know they projected the next, I think 15 or 20, like I said, we're gonna lose another 10%. But that's prior to knowing what's going on with Crane and other areas around.
Correct.
Now. So I think you're gonna see that we're gonna jump that up quite a bit here with what we have going on now.
Yeah, you've already seen it in the last 5 years. So it's good point, Mayor. Well, I'd be happy to answer any other questions. If not, I can talk a little bit about next steps.
Next steps.
Okay, next step. So PR, which you've got a copy. You don't have the full document. It's pretty big with all the appendices, so I just did excerpts for you guys. That we need to submit by April 1, which of course is Wednesday. So the goal would be to get everything submitted tomorrow is my plan if you direct me to submit it for you. So the first thing that we have is, I gave to Mr. Tieberbaugh, is a resolution giving signatory authorization to Mayor Ader. So that would be the first item that I would ask you to consider tonight.
I'll go ahead and read that. Whereas the city of Loogootee, Indiana, the participant has plans for a waste system improvement project to meet state and federal regulations, and the participant intends to proceed with the construction of such project. Now therefore be it resolved by the city council, the governing body of the participant, that Brian T. Ader, Mayor, be authorized to make applications for a state revolving fund loan, SRF loan, and provide the SRF loan program such information, data, and documents pertaining to the loan process as may be required, and otherwise act as the authorized representative of the participant, and the participant agrees to comply with state and federal requirements as they pertain to the SRF loan program, and 2 certified copies of this resolution be prepared and submitted as part of the participants' preliminary engineering report.
That authorization has to come through the council.
I guess the question I have, what's the difference between grants and a loan program?
So that's an interesting question. And so with grant, that's basically a repayment you don't have to make back, right? So basically a federal agency typically would give you the money to do the project. You would not have to pay that money back. With a loan, the benefit of SRF is the % interest rate. So if you qualify for lower income community, you get a lower interest rate, a very healthy interest rate compared to open market. I think open market's probably like 4.5%, 5% right now. So about 2% is what you would get with SRF. So that's the difference between a loan. You would have to repay that back at a low interest rate with a loan. And those are all things our financial advisor would kind of walk us through next step.
So let's just say, sake of argument, we got $2 million. Okay? That leaves 16 million roughly to do that.
Yep.
So is this would just give us an option to look at borrowing the money. It's not locking us in.
Correct. You're not getting locked into anything with making this mill. Correct.
And you can take stuff in or out of the projects, different ones, you know, so. It just gives us the, lots of work to take a look or move forward to the next step before we make any final decisions. And it's like going back to the rates, you know, they're figuring rates on the highest thing, you know. You can't really figure an accurate rate until we know exactly what we're gonna get or what we're not gonna get. But it gives you an idea on a worst case scenario. Hopefully we don't have a worst case scenario.
We'll find out probably this summer. So, yeah.
So
I'll make the motion that we proceed forward just to see where it goes.
okay, a motion from Mike,
A second.
second from Dave, all in favor on the council. Okay.
Thank you. The second resolution that we would have for your consideration tonight is the PER that I just went over. Just acknowledging that and basically accepting the PER that I went over with you tonight, the necessary improvements associated with that. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Tepperbaugh on that as well.
Whereas the city of Loogootee of Martin County, Indiana has caused a preliminary engineering report dated March 2026 to be prepared by the consulting firm of Midwest Engineering, a CHA company, and whereas said PER has been presented to the city at a public meeting held on March 30th, 2026 at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for public comment, and whereas a public hearing will be held later in April 2026 to present the PER to the public for questions and comments, and whereas the city council finds that there was not sufficient evidence presented in objection to the recommended project in the PER. Now therefore be it resolved that the PER dated March 2026 be approved and adopted by the city council, and that said PER be submitted to the state revolving fund loan program for review and approval.
Need a motion and a second from the city council.
So this is basically to have 2 more public hearings, you said, on this?
No. So what you have for your consideration tonight is you would basically be accepting the recommendations of the PER that I went over. What we're saying in that is we will still do a public hearing and open it up to question comment. The basis saying we're going to make application to SRF based upon the PER that was presented to you tonight.
Why does a public hearing need to be done that quickly?
It's part of the process. So ideally, we would have that public hearing before we submit to SRF, but the time just didn't work out. And I wanted to present it to you, the council, first before really doing that public hearing.
So we won't have an answer before that meeting on the grant?
No, you won't have an answer on that until this summer. Yep. Yes, sir.
July, I think it says.
Still doesn't tie us into anything.
if we have this public hearing, and there's an outcry, we can say, well,
All you're doing is making an application to SRF.
Right.
You're not committing to doing the project. Yes.
I'll make the motion.
Motion Mike, second.
I'll second.
Second by Jeremy. All in favor?
Aye.
Well, we will go ahead and finish up all the documents. Mayor, are you going to be available tomorrow? We'll have a couple other forms for you to sign. The asset management form. There's a couple other certification forms. So I'll be in Loogootee tomorrow, so I'll touch base with you and get those forms. After 3? Okay, sounds good.
3. We'll hook up sometime tomorrow between 3.
Thank you, everyone, for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item, two of those, is gonna be the special events ordinance.
This will be an amendment to the ordinance to repeal and recreate establishing the regulation and cost for the use of city property. The ordinance to repeal and recreate establishing the regulation and cost for use of city property is hereby amending section 1B of paragraph 8, permitting procedures as follows. All wording after city clerk shall be stricken. The paragraph in question stated, the application must be filed with the city clerk on forms provided no less than 45 days prior to the proposed event, including application for all other necessary permits and or licenses related to the event. If a complete application is not received before the deadline, the application fee will double, and the city may deny the permit. Applicants are encouraged to submit applications as far in advance of the event as possible, but no application shall be accepted more than 1 year prior to the proposed date of the event. So that now is, most of that language is removed, and it will now just state that the application must be filed with the city clerk.
Need a motion from the council in a second to approve the amended ordinance.
So we're just taking out the 45 days portion.
Well, no, we're actually striking quite a bit of language out of it that would pertain to deadlines and doubling of application fees and some of that. So it is technically more than just the 45 days coming out of it. But this
Pertains to
results
deadlines.
are,
Pertains to deadlines.
yes.
I'll make the motion to accept the amendment as presented.
a second.
Second by Dave, all in favor on the council?
Aye. And I'll make the motion that we suspend the rules and make it effective immediately.
Motion, second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Alright. Clears that up. Lori, you wanna talk about this continued disclosure service here with,
I don't need, I just wanted to get you this in your hand. With the bond, one of the bonds we did last year, the sewer bond, there will be reports that have to be given to Indiana Bond Bank, and Baker Tilly is going to, they can do that for us if we get an agreement with them to do that. So I would like you to think about it and look through this, and you've all looked at it, make sure, see what I need to do to try to get you guys to allow me to do this. Because honestly, I just think the reporting's probably above my head, and these bonds are not something we want to ever mess up and have to do anything else with. So this is just the email from her to see about what it is. And then all of these are in the documents that she has sent me. So again, it is all a little bit over my head. But it all has to do with that sewer bond we just closed in October of last year, and every year reporting has to, Clint's shaking his head, because he knows there's a lot of reporting that goes with these things, and you need to make sure they're done right, and I am not probably the person you have in charge of that, to make sure.
Fee for
because
this? What's
It's
the-
way above my head.
yeah,
There'll be a fee.
What's the fee for this? Any idea roughly? I mean,
I couldn't find a fee within here, I mean, other than an hourly fee. I'm gonna check with Jessica Lynn to make sure, see if that's what it
Yeah.
is. I mean, if it is a flat hourly, and ask her an estimate of what it would, I mean, I don't know. I mean, probably, as far as I can tell, there's an hourly rate in there, but I have no idea if it will take them 5 hours, 20 hours, 100 hours. So I'm going to have her clarify that. That's why I don't want a decision on it, but I want it in your hands to look at, since we're 2 weeks away from the next meeting, just to have your questions, and if you have more questions, I can shoot them out to Jessica, because she feels good about getting the answer.
Yeah, Jessica's really responsive. You know, I'm not usually privy to their contract with the city, but I think it would be prudent to ask for a estimated fee.
All right, thank you,
Well,
Lord.
worst case scenario, they usually give us a not to exceed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's what, you got it together very quickly for me, just because I said the faster I can get it in your hands, you can look at it. So I haven't had time to look real close and to get details with her yet, but I wanted it in your hands. You know, the next meeting, this is something, because reports are going to be due soon. So the sooner we can tell them, yes, get them ready, then better it will be for us in the long run.
Now back over to Board of Works here. I didn't make a copy for everybody, but, attorney has one, but special events for the Pride Fest, you know, we asked that we have an application put in. We did not receive an application. This was given back in, last year after their Pride Fest. All that states is the lawsuit and is requesting to use the public square for Pride Fest Saturday, September 5th, 2026. We're the same roads closed this year, ordered by Judge Young around the public square for the 2026 festival. Would also like a schedule of fees of electricity at the fountain, barricades, 6 locations necessary for closure. So we need to act on this. I mean, this is not an application. And, you know, we've moved everything down to the pavilion now, so, do you like to make any comments on this?
I mean, I'm aware of what state, that is in. I know there are attorneys involved in this as well. At this point in time, I think there's some other applications for special events that have been submitted as well. I think that we should probably put them on the agenda for the next meeting and make decisions on all special event applications in the order in which they were received.
Okay. But this is not an actual application.
I understand, but I would recommend that we make sure that all sides attorneys are aware that we're addressing these things, and we can, I'll definitely reach out to all attorneys involved and make sure we are addressing it at the next meeting.
Okay. So can I get a motion from the Board of Works that, all special events, including this, will be addressed at the next meeting?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nothing else, I'll ask.
As long as that one's put on the proper forms and stuff, right? I mean, the stuff that we have, that's based by ordinance, right?
I'm sorry?
The permit request is based on by ordinance?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the ordinance addressed.
So they'll have to be done by,
application.
yeah, application. Okay.
Ask for someone to make a motion to adjourn.
Both of them or just one of them?
We're all together here. I think we can get by with one.
I'll make a motion.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We done.
You have the resolution. Okay, I was gonna say you've got that.
Right, yeah, signatures on the handle too.
Oh, we got signatures here.
Yeah.
everybody.
Okay.